Welcome back. This is the circuitry video for the SNAILS version 1.0. So as you can see here, we have our fully assembled SNAILS, and then we have a Raspberry Pi 3 Plus B. It's currently in a black case, but the original version just looks like this. And then right here we have the motor driver or motor controller. So those are the three big pieces that we're going to need. Right next to the Raspberry Pi, I have a GPIO little cheat sheet. So for what each of the pins on the Raspberry Pi lines up to. And currently I have it orientated so that it matches the orientation on the Pi. So we're just going to go through where all of the wires are hooked up at the moment. As you can see in the Raspberry Pi, we're going to start with all the connections that go from the Raspberry Pi to the motor controller, starting with this yellow one right here. This yellow one right here is hooked up to the third pin on the bottom, which is also pin 6, and that is the ground pin. If you follow that yellow pin, it actually turns into this green one right here. Sorry, that's a little confusing. But this green then goes in. Remove that purple wire. That green is going into this second blue pin on the motor driver. We then go back over here. You can look at this purple one. This purple one is at the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th pin, I believe. And that corresponds to the 16th pin on our cheat sheet. So if we follow that purple wire all the way through, the purple wire on the motor driver is then the second actual pin on the motor driver. Then directly next to the purple pin on the Pi, we have a green one. That green one stays next to the purple wire, but on the opposite side, it's the third pin on the motor driver. Then lastly, we have the red wire on the Raspberry Pi that skips one beat and is on the 22nd pin, or I believe it's the 8th, 9th, 10th. I think it's the 11th down. I could be wrong on that one, but it's for sure the 22nd pin, or GPIO 25 on the cheat sheet. It's that one right there. And so if we follow the red wire over to the motor driver, the red driver is on the opposite side of the purple one. It's on the very first GPIO pin on the motor driver. Now the more complicated parts are these two power wires on the motor driver. It's in these larger black and red wires. These are in the first two blue pins on the motor driver. The black one you can see shares a pin with this green wire, which leads into the yellow wire on the Raspberry Pi, and then the red one is on its own pin, the very first one. So those are your power pins. If you follow that cord here, that's this big one right here. This one actually plugs into the wall. So this is a power outlet. It just plugs directly into the wall, and that powers the motor driver. We then have our power wires on our Raspberry Pi. So to start, this is the power wire on the Raspberry Pi right here. It's a micro USB port right there, and that plugs into the wall. We also have a few other display options on the Raspberry Pi. So this right here is an HDMI display port. So this is plugged into the computer, and as you can see, I currently have it powered up so that up on the screen you can see the Raspberry Pi display. And then on the side here we have two USB ports. One of these is hooked up to the keyboard and one is hooked up to the mouse. The last connections are to the motor itself. So the two motor ports are these two blue ones that I'm kind of pointing to here. I'll take my screwdriver here. They are these two ports right here. They go to the two nodes that are on the motor, so you're going to need to hook wires up from the motor to both of those, and that's how you connect it to the actual SNAILS assembly over here. Those two nodes, you can never really know which one is which, so you have to use trial and error to figure out which one should be on which, and you can always just switch which one goes to which node. Once you have the Raspberry Pi powered up, make sure you have an SD card that has Noobs installed. There's lots of Raspberry Pi tutorials online that you can follow for that. You then need to add the code that we provided in the GitHub repository. As you can see, I just threw it on the desktop over here in a slow pipetting folder. I'm going to open a terminal and we can navigate to the slow pipetting folder and play any of our programs. And thanks for watching.